Greetings all. So welcome back to my Let's Learn series. And at this point we've reached, what can I say about this point? At this point I've gone through Into the Darkness dungeons that were suggested there. We basically visited up the Old Forest, the Sandworm Lair, the Old Maze, and Ikara. And we're basically at this point at the end of what can be considered the, well, let's just put it this way. The starter dungeons that we did like at the start of this Let's Learn period, that was like the beginning of the game. And then once we got past that, we were basically in the early mid-game. At this point, we've reached a point where we're sort of at the end of the early mid-game, and now we're entering the late mid-game. And in many ways, it's only a few dungeons that is basically going to be comprised of the mid-game. One of the dungeons I'm in here is Ruined Dungeon, and I'll note something just before I continue. This Ghast here, he did something called Ghoulish Leap, so he's now got the ability to sort of use the ability to jump toward me whenever he wants to. You didn't really see it from the Ghast and the ghouls and the other guys from the Ruined Halfling complex, but we've gotten to the point where these guys are now high enough level to actually do so. But now, we're in a Ruined Dungeon. This is, well, considered to be the last dungeon that you probably will face in the early mid-game, and you might do it a little bit earlier than when I did it. I did this like sort of late because I consider this dungeon to be a dungeon you go to if you want to pick up a few spare items or ingredients. What this dungeon is, it's basically a random mixture of monsters that you could encounter. There could be any sort of monster that you might fight here. Like, we fought a snake and a couple of Ghast there. Here's a lightning elemental that we're fighting now. There's a thief behind him. And there's basically a random assortment of monsters that can be spawned in this dungeon. You want to be very careful in the Ruined Dungeon because it's very possible you might find some enemies that aren't too friendly to fight. At this point, we basically, we found like, oozes and the couple of elementals, but there can be some really nasty stuff that you might find in here. This is a dungeon that it can be very difficult or it can be very easy depending on what type of monsters spawn in here. There's some multi-hued drakes. I don't think we've actually seen these yet, but these are a very special type of multicolored dragon enemy that you can basically fight. The drake hatchlings aren't too bad, but just from looking at their resist and all that, you can see that they're basically evenly distributed in resist between acid, physical, cold, fire, and lightning. Multi-hued are basically, what can I say about them? They're basically prismatic, or they're basically rainbow dragons, or whatever else you want to say about them. They're basically the top tier dragons that you'll fight, and they're usually none too friendly. Alright, now in the Ruined Dungeon, there's basically going to be 6 of these type of enemies called Guardians. This guy here is the first one. He's a bone giant. We already know about them, but anyways, these Guardians are more or less just rare monsters of like a, whatever type of Guardian you're basically fighting. In this case, we're fighting this guy here. He looks like he's got Pace Yourself. Pace Yourself is a skirmisher talent, so this guy's probably a ranger. And he's got Kneecapper and... Alright, so this is a skirmisher rare. He's probably not going to be too tough, but what we're going to do first, we're just going to drop this on him. This guy can actually hit me already, but he hasn't done so. But we're just basically going to abuse it by... We're going to basically sit a little close to him and like, try and burn him to death. Because it looks like he's being, stopped by this jelly. This is kind of abusive to the AI, but sometimes you can get away doing this stuff like this. So in this case, we're just sort of, letting this guy sort of get killed off before we even, begin the battle with him. Okay, at this point, he's, managed to sort of avoid me. We're just going to go after him now. We're going to use Shadow Step, I guess. And we'll hit him with Sweep. He did his little bone shield there, but at this point we can just basically tear through him with our talents. He wasn't as tough as I figured he would be, but whatever. They can sometimes be tough. Not the Bone Giant, but the Skirmisher rare class that he was. The Skirmisher class is kind of interesting. It's a new class that hasn't really been balanced yet for the game. It's got a few talents that are kind of noteworthy for doing a lot of damage. You want to be very careful of. Alright, we got a bunch more drakes. We got storm drakes and venom drakes and a couple more jellies. So all the enemies I'm fighting in here are completely random. And I might get bone giants like the rare I saw over there, or I might get less dangerous stuff like these hatchlings. But hopefully I'll find a really dangerous monster in here just to sort of showcase how dangerous this place can be. Okay, we're just going to keep going this way. See, I'm just basically just running through these guys left and right. Okay, that guy did Ghoulish Leap. You didn't really see it, but Ghoulish Leap will start to make more of an appearance later on. In the next dungeon we're pretty much going to be going to after this, I think. Alright, here's this guardian. It's basically a lightning ant. He's got... Let's see, he's got dual strike, he's got hack and back. It looks like this guy is a marauder. So we're just going to drop that there. We'll do this. We'll obviously hit him with dirty fighting. And he basically heaved me back there. We're going to rush him. He's out of the way. Much like rare enemies, they always drop their little rare items. They're not really too tough, the rares in here, but sometimes you'll find a rare of a class, like say you could find like a rare master vampire. That could be possibly frightening. I've had instances where rare vampires can be quite deadly just because they're one of those few types of monster enemies that get really strong when they become rares. Alright, oh, this is actually just a rare. So, you can also find, regular rares in here as well. In this case, we found ourselves an archer. We'll drop that there. Drop this here. Okay, we're actually getting beaten up by quite a few things in here. And there's actually a doomed guardian over there. Oh, I'm getting hit by his... Nope, you want to be very careful what's sort of on your tile. In this case, he's got searing light there. That's why he's taking all that damage. So we're just going to sit here. Basically, we're just going to deal with these guys as they sort of come up on me. Alright, I think this is probably the first time you've seen it, but here's confusion. The target is confused and acting randomly. They have a basically a potential failure to do complex actions, so whenever I try and use my talent, I can possibly fail it. And at the same time, if I try and move around, I may move around randomly, so I could try and move here, and instead I'll move toward this guy instead. So confusion is a really detrimental status effect, but I don't think it's going to be too bad to deal with him that way. And hopefully we'll deal with this guy as well before anything bad happens. So there we go, we're done. So that guy's dead. I assume we're going to basically breeze through this dungeon without much issue. But it might be a good place to find a possibly strong monster we could fight. It happens every so often. Ruined Dungeon will throw something to surprise you. And this guy got side blades. What are you? This guy's a summoner, so I just want to try and daze him real quick. Stun him. Kill him. He used something called Form Grab on me. That basically does a bit of nature damage per turn and reduces my speed. It's kind of deadly, but not really. Summoners are more deadly when they actually summon stuff. Anaconda, nothing really in here I really care about. They're all dead. Temple Stalker. So there's an instance where something, like this guy popped up that could have been very deadly to deal with, and he actually launched a poison infusion on me there. I was going to get rid of that instantly and just start healing. I'm gonna get up close, kill him. Deal with this fire ant buddy. Oops, I got pinned there. Let's try this then on him. And he'll just burn to death. Now, you note that I'm sort of like going through both these like initial rooms here. Oh boy. Well, I was wondering when I eventually find this guy. Behold, the worm that walks. Alright, so I'll note that the worm that walks here, this is something to be very, 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 very scared of. And those varies were not for, this, scary emphasis. This guy is a killer. The worm that walks is probably the most dangerous enemy, this natural enemy that you'll fight in the game. What this guy can do, he basically has, well, let's just look at him naturally. This guy resists acid 100%. He has 50% physical resistance. He has 100% blight resistance. His only real weakness is fire. And if you look at him a little bit further, he's basically immune to disease. He's immune to blind. He's immune to stunning. He's immune to freezing. He's immune to fear. And he can't insta-kill him. This guy is just scary. He's very defensive, and usually when you're fighting him, he'll have several infusions, like a regeneration infusion here, that can make him this very durable. He also has talents like Blindside here, which lets him basically, much like my Shadow Step, just get instantly on top of the guy, on top of you to hit you up. And then there's other stuff like Acid Strike, Bloodlust, and everything else that just makes this guy a whole pile of nasty to sort of fight. My suggestion is whenever you see this type of enemy here, the first thing you should probably do is RTFA. We're literally going to run away from this guy as fast as possible. I will come back to this dungeon much, much, much later because that guy's there. So there's an instance where I literally just, ran at first sight of that guy, and it's for good reason. Those guys, there's probably never going to be an instance where those guys will not be weak to fight. They will always pose some sort of difficulty to you, and they will always basically just rip you to pieces if you give them a chance. Alright, I found this ring here I'm looking at. I'll note that even though I don't think much of disarm and pinning and knockback type immunity rings, this ring has something called a critical multiplier on it. Critical multipliers are actually very, very good. They basically increase the amount of critical damage that you'll do when you critical stuff. So this is actually not a bad ring to possibly hold on to. I may not use it just yet, but it might be useful later on. That gives me evasion. We don't really care about that. I'll note that all these rare enemies have dropped, a whole bunch of rare stuff that might have, something useful to me if I look at them. No, we don't need those. Alright, that's a very interesting item. I'll let you note that on this item it has like something called only diving, makes you negative 40% life, or negative 40 life. What that's basically saying is that if I equip this item, I can't die until I hit negative 40 life. So I can actually go below 0 health and still live a little bit with this item on if I put it on. I probably won't put it on because it's not really something that really interests me a whole lot, but it could be a nice little addition to sort of use on some characters if you are going for a very durable build that will basically survive a lot of stuff that's thrown at you. Okay, so now this stuff is really interesting to me. We're just going to basically exit the ruined dungeon. I'll note, by the way, that this is probably a dungeon that there could be a strong monster like that worm that walks is popping up. If you see a strong monster in here, the ruined dungeon, just immediately run away usually. I've had guardians that were very strong. I've had that worm that walks has popped up. That's probably the most dangerous instance where I basically had something pop up that could really threaten me. Alright, at this point, I've done more or less all the mid-early game dungeons, and I still can't see Bearscape anyways. Usually at this point, I can pretty much say that you've entered the late mid-game, and you should probably start preparing for it. If you haven't done anything from the early mid-game, that you aren't putting off, like that ruined dungeon, I'm going to put that off until I'm a little fairy character, so to speak. Once I hit level 30, I might go back to the ruined dungeon, but that one that walks is really scary. But anyhow, some other stuff that I pushed off until before, like, remember when we sort of avoid the boss in here? Let's go to the very old halfling complex and basically go kill off the boss in here. So we'll basically just go find him and deal with him. Alright, so this door, I said basically leave it alone, initially. And the purpose for leaving this alone was the fact that there is a boss in here, but there's also something special about him. So I'm just going to open this door. When you open up the door to the ruined halfling complex for the boss sort of situation here, you basically see this guy, Subject Z. He's the boss. But you also see this guy next to him. It's called the Weist. This guy, if you actually save him, there's actually a big benefit to you, assuming you aren't a halfling character. If you're a halfling, then you can just do this whenever you feel like it. But this is like an instance where this guy, he's actually going after this Weist. And if he kills him, then you lose the quest reward for it. If, however, you kill Subject Z before he kills him, and you aren't a halfling, you get a big reward. So what we want to do, because I basically have phase door, we're going to try and do this. I've heard that you can basically use this to basically target him and get him out of the way. So let's try doing this. We're just going to throw him out here. So I actually threw out the Weist so that this guy is no longer anywhere, next to him. This guy is a very dangerous boss in a way because he can do a lot of damage. If you look at him initially, you'll see that he's got Shadow Combat. This guy's actually a Shadow Blade, much like my character. So he's got Shadow Step like me. He's got Shadow Combat that lets him increase his damage with mana cost. He's got Dirty Fighting. He's got a whole slew of dangerous stuff that could really rip you to pieces if you're not careful. When you're fighting this guy, what you really want to do, you basically want to hit him really hard. We're actually going to try hitting with the Rune of Rift, I think. We're actually not going to use that just yet. We're going to do maybe this first. And he just did Dark Tendrils. That's kind of sucky, but oh well. We're basically going to just wait for him to sort of get to us. And, okay, so there's Shadow Step. As you can see here, it hurts a lot there. So he can do a lot of damage. He's not too dangerous, I don't think. But he's dangerous enough that you should be wary of what he can do. What we want to do to him right now is hit him with Dirty Fighting. And what did he just hit me with? Did he just use Flurry on me? Alright, he used Flurry there. Flurry is, much like my skill, it hits you multiple times. He actually missed me 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but he hit me a couple more times after that. So, it's just the effect of how deadly Fury can be when used. We're going to activate a Raft of Woods now. We'll activate Regeneration. This guy's actually, he was stunned, I think, but he shrugged it off. Let's see here. I used Dirty Fighting. Okay. I think he tried to stun me. I don't think I stunned him, sadly, so he's not stunned. But anyhow, we've basically lost some health. We want to use our Regeneration Infusion to start healing up. He hasn't been stunned yet, so we're going to try hitting with Dual Strike. And there's our buddy, the Weist, slowly, making his way over to us. This guy, he wants to fight Subject Z, but you basically don't want him fighting Subject Z because he is, he gives you a quest reward if you manage to kill Subject Z before he dies. So that's what we really want to do. This is probably a good time to use Rune of Rift. And there we go. We basically hit him with Rune of Rift there. So he's been hit for some damage. He pops out because, it's been 4 turns. That's actually one situation where Rune of Rift was kind of useful. So he's still stunned, much like, it basically 4 turns passes, he doesn't lose his durations I have put on already. So he's still taking quite a bit of damage. We're going to hit him with Flurry. And there we go, we killed him. Alright, so after you defeat him, you can go to the Yeek here, and you can basically talk to him. Before you stands a creature about as tall as a halfling, covered in small white fur, and with disproportionate head. You'll also notice he does not wield his greatsword. It seems to float in the air, bound to his will. Why did you save me, stranger? You are not of the way. Alright, you have 2 options here. You can kill him, which is not really advisable, or you can just basically say, well, you need some help. And the greatsword flows to a less aggressive stance. He seems surprised. Then on behalf of the way, I thank you. So what is the way, and what are you? The way is enlightenment, peace, and protection. I'm a Yeek. I came for this tunnel, blah, blah. He basically says stuff, and then eventually once you get to it, he basically leans towards you. Your mind is suddenly filled with feelings of peace and happiness. And what actually happens is he gives you a bonus. So if you actually manage to save him, what he'll do is he'll actually give you improved mental save and confusion resistance. This is actually natural stuff that I'll be able to keep. This is one of the reasons I basically left this, that guy alone for a little bit, just so I can make sure I was strong enough to kill him before the Yeek was ever, came to harm as a result. And I'll note, by the way, there's a staircase over here. You can't actually go into this this staircase. It's basically the long tunnel to the Isle of Rel. Rel is the home place for the Yeeks, but unless you're a Yeek, you can't actually go in there. So don't worry about that unless you're a Yeek. We picked up Night Song here. This is actually a really nice ring for a Shadow Blade to use. We might make use of that in the future. And that's pretty much it for the Halfling complex here, so we're done with it. So I was actually thinking this episode would go along a lot longer than this. I would have liked to use go to visit Bearscape or the Lost Land of Poosh or anything like that, but at this point there's really nothing left in my game that can be construed as early game, and it's probably a good time to go into like a sort of discussion rant, so to speak. So the late mid game is pretty much where I'm going to be headed to next. The main part of the late mid game is comprised by this place called Dreadfall over here. Dreadfall is like the mid-level dungeon for Tales of Maj'Eyal. Once you get into Dreadfall, this is basically the mid-game dungeon, and it's going to take a long time to get through it. It'll actually take me multiple episodes to go through it as a result. We're going to go to the Last Hope here, and we're just basically going to prep up for it, and then move on. And before I do, I should probably check out my stuff here. So I picked up Night Song here. This is a really nice ring. I'm actually not. I'm actually kind of considering putting it on a little bit early because it's so nice. I might actually take off the blood collar here. The blood collar is nice because it does give you life reach, but because this actually has reduced mental save, it's actually not that great for Dreadfall. Stuff like Night Song here is actually very nice because it does have increased mental save. It also gives me reduced fatigue value on my stamina cost, and also ups my Shadow Step usage as well. So we're actually going to put this on. And I'll probably keep this until later. This is also a nice ring for Dreadfall. I'm going to keep Blood Collar just so you know. I'm not like selling it or anything, but this is not as useful for the next dungeon, so to speak. Alright, so at this point, I'll note, by the way, there's the ring. The Shadow Step, or the Night Song ring here, it gives me something called Dark Tendrils. That's basically it's a pinning ability that you can use. When you basically shoot out these Dark Tendrils at a target, they slowly creep toward it, and then they basically pounce on and pin the target that you hit with it. It's actually a really nice ability, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Alright, so at this point, my character, I basically have to get him ready for Dreadfall. I've sort of, just sort of been like, lazying on my inscriptions. I haven't really improved these any at all. So I'm going to basically check the shop here to see if there's anything that might be able to shore them up a little bit. Sadly, I don't think we'll find anything very useful, but we might find something that's useful. I'm basically at this point, I'm happy I still have this Wild Infusion. This will still be very useful because the cooldown's low, but we only have one Regeneration Infusion, and we do have a Shielding Ruin as well, but the other two inscriptions are kind of lackluster. The Primal Infusion here, it is a random infusion, but one of the basic problems with this infusion is that it only cures one effect. And because it cures magical, physical, and mental, if you have 3 different types of effects on you, like 2 magical effects, 1 confusion effect, you're stunned and dazed, you're only going to remove one of those, and you don't really have any real control over which one gets removed. It is a nice, infusion to use if you don't have anything better, but it's something that you probably want to be replaced with something a little bit better than it at some point. And what I'm thinking about possibly doing, we're possibly going to go replace this Teleportation Ruin over the Primal Infusion. Now, Teleportation Ruins, much like, well, they're basically, Teleportation Ruins are part of a Movement Inscription type of ruin. They basically work like my, my natural teleport ability, but the purpose for picking this up would be that I have 2 escape abilities. People usually like to shun teleportation runes, but I actually find her very, very useful in like Dreadfall. So this might be a good candidate for replacing this on. I might also make use of the lightning rune just to sort of demonstrate what it sort of does, or the biting gill rune here just to sort of show what it does. But I'm thinking about possibly doing it over the rune of Rift here at some point instead. What I really want is to find a movement inscription, and movement infusions are a very powerful movement type of inscription you can use on your character. They're what they basically do. They basically let you move really fast for a short duration, and as long as you don't attack anything, you basically keep moving very fast. I don't think we're gonna find any because I don't remember running through here and seeing any initial infusions. But let's do a quick check to make sure. It's also good, by the way, to check out your these old regeneration infusions that you may have passed up before. Sometimes they might have better values after you've increased your stats a little bit. I'll note at this point that my stats, I basically have really high dexterity score, fairly decent magic, and I'm getting a fairly decent cunning as well. Those will play a big impact on the effectiveness of my runes. Like this regeneration infusion I'm using right now. The reason that this is still very effective is because it's based on dexterity. So it's still, it's going up every time I increase my dexterity score a little bit every time to be a little bit more effective. Okay, there's a Grimly. I'll note, by the way, that there's this instance called a Lost Kitty. If you say, "Oh, kitty, kitty," and then you give him a little bit of troll intestines, he looks happily at you, and then he'll basically just revisit you as like a pet. Is all he is. Alright, we want to get into Anguin to check out their inscription shop. So yeah, at this point, if you're still watching this episode, this is just me preparing for Dreadfall. Okay, the Ruin Shop has a teleportation rune, but it's not very good. Has a couple biting gill runes that aren't very good. And that's got too long cooldown on it. And that doesn't scale with anything, sadly. That's got a longer cooldown. So yeah, we're basically not finding a whole lot of good inscriptions. This is actually part of the game where, well, what can I say about this really part of the game? You're basically looking for stuff, and there's really nothing around to sort of improve your character further. So I actually feel I'm going to be going underpowered, so to speak, into Dreadfall. I haven't really found a whole lot of decent equipment so far in this run. By the way, since I come back to Durf and I've killed Urkus, the mages have kept their word. Durf was free of the storm clouds, blah, blah, blah. I might want to keep this at some point, just because that's actually becoming a very decent ruin, minus the fact that it's got terrible... it's got, extra 2 cooldown on it. These wild infusions, by the way, the ability to reduce damage is actually very beneficial, but it's just a thing that it's really nice to sort of have that like cooldown 12 on a physical effect removing wild infusion. I actually, it's one of those things. Unless you find a better 12 turn cooldown physical removing wild infusion, I don't really recommend removing it. God, there's so many of these guys over here. Okay, we're going to try going this way. At this point, I visited all the infusion shops, but there's still one ruin shop left to visit, the one in Elvia over here. So we're just going to visit it here. And there is nothing in here that interests me. Okay, so I've basically gone through all the shops. There's nothing really to sort of, buffer up my inscriptions. I might, hopefully I'll find something better than this problem infusion, or I might very well just come over here and replace it with like, one of these runes along with the temple infusion rune I'm using right now. I'll note that the Randart runes, like, this Rune of the Rift or the Primal Infusion, in this game, the Randart inscriptions aren't that great. They're actually really weak in comparison to just finding a really high-powered one that scales your stats. There's only one exception to it, and I've yet to really come across it. I hope to basically find it, but I'll basically tell you what it is. It's basically called the Reflection Shield Ruin. It's basically just random ruin that basically acts like a damage shield that will reflect damage back at the enemy. You only get one of it usually during the game, and it usually only drops off a very special monster that's unique and only appears in enemies that spawn of trolls. Hopefully we'll see it, but we may not come across it. Alright, well, we're going to drop into Dreadfall here. And I'll note that this is also a place where you can find escorts. So we found this guy, the Lost Norfil. Norfils are actually really... I'm actually really happy I just found this escort, by the way. But we're actually going to end this episode now. And next time, we're going to start exploring Dreadfall, the middle game dungeon of Tales of Maj'Eyal. So for now, take care, and well, hopefully I'm not going to be running away from this dungeon too damn quick. See you next time.